Okay. Everyone had a good lunch, had some coffee. I forgot to do the second one, so I'm going to do that as soon as we're done here. What we're going to do, this is kind of the focal point of the day. We'll have to make it a little bit tighter than I anticipated. The morning ran long, but for very good reasons. So I think it was well worthwhile. This is where things are going to get more active. There's, at any of these events, there's that casual lunchtime conversation of, oh, I didn't realize you did this thing well. My company tends to do it poorly. You have something I need. But it can be a little bit slow. So this is going to be more like speed dating. We're going to expedite that process. So what I would like to do is I would like to go over assets and liabilities. Every company has them. Every agency has them. So we're at the top of this, where it says name, is not your personal name. It's your firm or your agency. There are things you do well. There are things that you would like to do better. So what we want to do during this exercise is ideally find somebody that can offset our liabilities. That's all we want in business. We want it as agencies as well, but in business, we're just going around trying to find somebody that does something well that we don't, and together we're better than we are alone. So we're going to formalize that. Ideally, the other option is you can flip a liability. A random example would be that you're geographically isolated, and maybe that's problematic. But if you can figure out why being geographically isolated is a good thing, because it allows for some new opportunity, or it means that you're separated from some problem in urban areas or something like that, that's an actual flip. And then the other option is to, again, make these instant connections. The way I envision it, do it however you want, but I envision that instead of just handing out business cards like we always do and then nobody ever talks again, what you do is if you find somebody's asset card that matches your liability card, put it down in front of you, take a photograph of it, take a photograph of their line QR code, you send it to each other, you know exactly who you're talking to and about what. So it's not this ambiguous, maybe we should talk one day. It's very precise. This is the connection, and this is how we're going to facilitate. If you don't use line, put your business card in the photograph or whatever you want to do. But that's kind of how I envision this going. So assets and liabilities, strengths and weakness. So let's imagine Maysot Cafe. There is a cafe actually on the way back from Mae La refugee camp that I happen to know has a really diverse customer base. They have a ton of NGO people. They also have a lot of Thai people. They also have Burmese people. So they get a steady flow of traffic. They're right there on the highway. The SECs being built. These are all good things. They have fair trade coffee because they develop relationships with local growers. So it's not like the supply chains are long and complex. And they have a strong training program. They are good at what they do. The problem is that their baristas only speak Thai. They have Thai staff and Thai HR that knows how to hire Thai people. So the baristas only speak Thai. Because there can be these language problems, there can be miscommunication, which slows down service, which if the line gets too long, customers may go away, they get the wrong order, they stop coming back. So their inability to maybe communicate with NGOs or Burmese, Korean, is a problem for the business. Okay. By the way, this coffee shop totally exists, so this is a real thing. So is this. We have the IOM and the IRC here today. They work with migrants. So they happen to know, wow, we actually, you're in Mae La, well that's Maysot, and we have this huge number of migrants that can legally work in Thailand. Maybe you thought, in fact, I talked to a hotel owner that knew they employed migrants, but assumed it was all illegal. It's not. You can legally employ migrants. They can speak multiple languages. As I mentioned before, they probably grew up around the area. Maybe they grew up in camps but are now migrants. So they probably speak English well. I've met the hotel people that I was talking about. They spoke better English than people in Texas, where I'm from. So they're very solid, very personable people, but maybe you didn't know they existed. And so they have that cross-cultural experience as well because of where they grew up. So now the liability of Maysot Cafe is offset by the strengths of the IOM and the IRC. It's just one example. If you find each other, you'd say, wow, that's really cool. We should talk about that. Not right now because we're speed dating, but it's a conversation we need to have. Or maybe we want to be a team in the hackathon. So let's start that process and start to identify who our best possible partners are. And so you put the cards down, you take a photograph, maybe use your business cards or use Line, but you connect in some immediate and specific way. I'll give you another one that's also kind of brilliant. So e-commerce in Thailand does have some challenges. Low online shopping adoption. The percentage is not as high as it is in maybe China or the United States. There's low consumer trust because maybe the first movers online sold some fake goods, so people don't have full trust in everything they buy on the internet. And then there's low e-payment adoption, and that's problematic. Not everybody has a credit card. They kind of like the rabbit cards. It's maybe the most sophisticated kind of banking they like to do. And so buying stuff online is legitimately difficult for them. So something like 3%, 7%, feel free to jump in. What is it? 3%. 3% of sales are online in Thailand. That is extraordinarily low. There's also somebody in the room from a super bank that now has the largest e-wallet in Thailand, right? So, and they did that by co-branding, which is something that you guys can discuss as well. It's one of the ways to engage with the private sector. It doesn't always have to be a J. Well, in fact, they can't joint venture. But co-branding is an option. So, largest e-wallet in the country, no credit card needed. You can top up at thousands of locations. And then that co-branding means that you have trust because the name on that e-wallet is two of the biggest companies in the country. And so now I have faith that if I'm buying something with this, that whatever I'm buying must be trustworthy. And so when these two people meet, they will offset one another, and they may decide that they want to be on a hackathon team. Or they may decide, forget the hackathon, I don't want to tell anybody about my brilliant idea, let's go start a business and forget about the conference. You're allowed to do that too. So if your idea is so brilliant that you don't want to tell the world, that's okay, because our real goal here today is to change the world. The hackathon is a mechanism for generating ideas. But the goal is, yes, we're going to come up with brilliant ideas today. Tomorrow we'll hammer them out. We'll have some trophies in the afternoon. But I am much more interested in what happens on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And I think these things, given the social enterprise law that just passed, and some of these very large companies that have to launch by the end of the year, I happen to know that some of the ideas that we come up with over the next couple of days will be implemented. The world will change. So this is not just a mental exercise. So that's assets and liabilities. I will leave this up so that you can see some keywords and some verbiage that may help you decide. We will float around and kind of facilitate, but what I'd like everybody to do is maybe take the first 5 minutes and try to write down 3 things that your company does well, or 3 things that it has, your agency. Again, this could be access to human capital if you're an agency. It could be relationships with the Ministry of Education because you're UNESCO. It could be your connections in certain provinces that maybe my company is doing business in or is not. Any number of things, but just try to evaluate what it is you do well. Try to evaluate what it is you don't do well, and someone else may be able to help you with. In about 5 minutes, we're going to start speed dating, and I'm going to ask you to go around, introduce yourselves to people, and try to match your assets with their liabilities, and vice versa. Any questions about that before we start? No, you all got that thing I made up just now? Yes.
I don't have a company.
You don't have a company? Okay. I'm really sorry to hear that. So if you're unemployed, if you don't have a company, your life's actually easier because you have an idea. So the people with real companies are restricted by reality. The people that just have an idea, your options are boundless. Your liabilities card may be a little longer than your assets card, but I'm pretty sure you can execute. You'll think of new assets and new liabilities. This is an ongoing process, absolutely. This is supposed to be organic. This is The entire purpose of this conference was to get you guys in a room, to connect the public and private sector. I know most of you, I know what you're capable of. I happen to know what you do and who fits, so I'll probably go around and introduce you to people, or I may have told you who to sit next to at lunch. But that's all we're trying to do here. So this should be relatively fun. It's just active networking. Good.